How's it going, guys? My name is Jason and I am one of the co-founders of SWAT English Academy here in the Gangnam district of Seoul, South Korea. I've been an English educator for over 15 years, and I'm very proud to announce that SWAT English Academy is introducing a literature program that's going to be academy-wide. Previously, it was only available to our 5th and 6th grade students, but now it's going to be available all the way from 1st grade through 6th. So in light of that fact, I decided to make a few videos to help you guys at home get the most meaning and benefit from reading literature and novels. Let's rock and roll. Alright guys, well first, I don't know how many times as a teacher I've been asked or told by students, "Teacher, I read the book, but I don't really know what it means." This is a comment that I often hear from students, and I thought it was really interesting because what I realized was students here in South Korea, they don't really differentiate between the different types of readings that they're going to be experiencing in their educational journey. So literature is much different from test-based reading. For test-based reading, you're reading a passage and you're just trying to process the information as quickly as possible. Whereas literature is a much more emotive or interpretive experience, meaning to really get the most benefit out of reading novels and stories, it's going to require a certain emotional connection to what's happening in the story, and it's going to require the reader to interpret the meanings on their own. There are really no right or wrong answers when you're reading a novel. That's up to the reader and how that particular book strikes them. There are a few telltale things that you have to pay attention to, though, if you want to maximize the amount of meaning you get from those stories. And the way we extrapolate meaning from literature is by looking at a few key areas, and this falls under the bracket or the overall category called exposition. Exposition basically comprises of setting, characters, conflicts, and resolutions. So you can look at it as those three chunks: setting, characters, and conflict resolutions. And today we'll be looking specifically at setting, and I'm going to be referencing a few films, a few popular movies in pop culture, because essentially movies are the same thing as novels. They're just novels in images, whereas literature is a story in words. All right, so, and before anything hits the screen in a movie theater, it always has to be written down on paper first. So when you're watching a movie, you're essentially watching a novel. So I'll be using some movie references for you guys just to hammer home some important things that you guys will need to remember when you're reading your books at home. All right, so let's begin. So setting is the first component of exposition, and setting is simply where the story takes place. This is a hugely important factor in determining what sorts of meaning the story is trying to convey to the reader. Is it a real or is it an imaginary place? This also impacts the meaning of the story. For example, if you were to just say the story takes place in America, well, America is a huge country, and if the story is taking place in Los Angeles, California, that's going to be very different than if the story is taking place in Alaska. They're both America, but the way that that story is going to play out, the types of characters that you're going to encounter, the types of conflicts that are going to be possible will be very different depending on where in the United States that story takes place. So the first thing you want to always remember when it comes to setting is really key in on where exactly is this story taking place. Is it real or is it imaginary? And if it's real, it never hurts for a reader at home to do a little bit of research on those places. Find out as much as you can about that place. Find out what the people are like, what their beliefs are. Is there a religion there? This sort of background information is really going to assist you in your reading experience. Secondly, when does the story take place is a huge part of setting. For example, a story taking place in modern day Seoul is going to be a lot different than a story taking place in Seoul in the 1960s. They're almost two completely different worlds. So you really want to figure out when the story takes place. Is it the past? Is it the present? Or is it the future? All of those different timelines are going to offer different sorts of meaning and impact the story and the characters in different ways. So always pay attention to when the story is taking place. A good way to figure out when the story, if it's not explicitly told in the story, is by looking at the sorts of technology that's available in this story. Does the speaker allude to what sorts of machinery is available? Do they have internet? Do they have smartphones? Are they riding horses? Are they shooting bows and arrows? All of these timelines are going to impact the types of meaning we can get from the story. What are the values of the people in those times as well? Like I said, people growing up in Seoul today are going to think and believe completely different things than people growing up in Seoul 70 years ago. So you really want to key in on those details as well. The point is, the overall point I want you guys to take from setting is, setting provides a context. All of the characters, all of the actions, all of the conflicts and resolutions that take place in your story is going to take place within the framework of that setting. That's why setting is so incredibly important to key in on. So let's take an example from a movie, a famous movie that most of you guys might know. It was originally a novel by R.J. Palacio. It's called Wonder. Wonder is a story of a young kid named Augie, and Augie has facial deformities. And in terms of the setting, it takes place in modern day New York City, in Manhattan. That's where Augie lives. And it is a modern day setting, and most of the action takes place at school. And Augie is in middle school in the United States in modern day. They make allusions to Xbox and Star Wars in the book, as well as in the movie. And that's how we know that it's taking place in the modern day. And so how does that affect or impact the meanings that we can extrapolate from the story? Well, the setting provides context. So if the action is taking place in a middle school, well, what sorts of conflicts, what sorts of problems would a character encounter in a modern day American middle school? These are things like bullying, friendship, family, figuring out one's identity or coming of age. These are all conflicts that you would expect middle school students to have to encounter. And if you read Wonder or you watch Wonder, you'll realize that that's exactly what Augie deals with in the story. All of those conflicts take place within that setting because they match that setting. On the flip side, if you take a novel like Yann Martel's Life of Pi, the setting is completely different. The setting is the open ocean, and there's a kid, Pi, stranded in a lifeboat along with some wild animals. I'm not going to get into too much detail there, but he's stranded in this open ocean situation, and he's basically struggling to survive. And so if you take that setting into consideration, the setting essentially becomes the conflict. It's this kid versus nature and the elements and the ocean. And the common themes that come out of this story are things like fear, uncertainty, danger, the power of belief and faith. These are the impacts that the setting has on the meaning that the story is trying to communicate to the reader. So the first element of exposition that I want you guys to always make sure you key in on at home is setting. Where and when does the story take place? Is it real or is it imaginary? Is it past, present, or future? And how does that setting impact the characters and the types of problems that they're going to encounter? This is all really important for all you readers to key in on at home. Also, if you have any questions or if you're curious about our new literature program, please feel free to contact SWAT English Academy. All of our contact information should be in the description box down below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as well, all that YouTube stuff. And also, don't forget to join us for our next video where we will be covering the second element of exposition, which is characterization. I'll see you then. Thanks for joining me. See you in a bit.